Hello and welcome to the School Mentor Podcast. Now, this is the podcast where we talk about all things coaching and mentoring within the school setting, and this is episode 18. My name is Miff Marstinek and I am your host. Now, today we are going to dig into reviewing your wellbeing strategy. Now, I've had a couple of weeks off, and the reason I had a couple of weeks off is because I've been launching the Mentors Packed Lunch, and the Mentors Packed Lunch has been it's all about creating some community. So it's an event that I run every single week in, week out. And what we do in there is we pick a really useful topic to teachers, to deputy heads, to basically anyone within the school community, all focused around wellbeing, because that is my area of expertise. And what we do is we pull one of these topics into the session. I give a little bit of knowledge and some insights into it. And then it's a fantastic forum where we've had some brilliant discussion about how we can improve wellbeing, and we're learning from different schools and we're learning from different roles within different schools, because I think there's a lot of forums out there that are focused on just sort of deputy head of pastoral, or just deputy head academic, or one specific area, sports or anything else. And what we have with the Mentors Packed Lunch is people coming from all over the school, and when we do that, we kind of cross-pollinate. We learn from different areas, because we've got people from boarding coming in and saying, actually, we've got these lessons that we've learned, and we've got people coming in from the academic side who are having different challenges, and there's been great learning coming across from both of those. So if you haven't yet joined one of the Mentor Packed Lunch sessions, I would love to have you in there. You can jump onto LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best place to find it, or drop me a message and I can send you all the information to join one of those events. But I've been focusing on that the past few weeks, and then we had half term, so I've had a couple of weeks away from the podcast. But what I've really reflected on, having done these sessions, is the requirement and the need for a process of stepping back and being able to review what you have in place for your wellbeing strategy, what's working, what's not, and how we can assess whether we're pulling in the right activities, the right events, the right programs, to make sure that you are maximizing what you're doing with your wellbeing strategy. And for anyone who knows kind of my background, I used to have a really, really corporate job. I worked in IT and in finance prior to moving into wellbeing. A big old shift there when I joined Samaritans, and it was a real light bulb moment for me, and it shifted the direction of my life entirely. But what I have been reflecting on quite recently, this sort of idea popped into my head, and it was around Gartner's Magic Quadrant. And Gartner do a lot of assessments of different IT firms and different IT products that are out there, and they create a quadrant, not unlike this one that I've drawn on my whiteboard behind me. And if you're listening to this, then I'm going to do my best to describe this to you as we go along. But one of the things that Gartner did was they were able to assess how different elements, how different products kind of measured up against one another. And all these products were sort of aiming to be in what they described as the Magic Quadrant, which was this sort of top right-hand quadrant of a table. And this idea popped into my head when I was thinking about how schools can review their well-being. And so I tried to think about what would be on the different axes. And here's what I've come up with, and here's what I'd like to share with you today. And it's a way of starting to think about all the great stuff that you're doing with your wellbeing strategy, and making sure that you have got all the bases that you need to be covered. So on our y-axis, at the top, we've got skills-based, and I would also call that kind of long-term, and I'll dive into exactly what that means. And at the bottom, we've got entertainment /short-term. And then on our x-axis, we've got reactive at the bottom left. So kind of reactive things that we do when we are wanting to respond to a specific event. Or we've got a proactive response. And this, for me, was probably one of the most valuable ways to review the wellbeing strategy in a school. And what you can start doing with this is you can start, let me find a pen, you can start plotting your wellbeing activities on this graph. So you might start to think, well, what things are we doing that would develop skills? Now, when I talk about things that are skills based, I want to see things that are repeated. So we're creating practice, and because we all know that if we have to practice, then we are going to get better at things. So we're going to develop skills. So what do we have in place that is longer term, that encourages practice, that maybe, particularly if we're focusing on student wellbeing rather than teacher wellbeing, they might be things that are quite student-led, that they have control of, that they have... that they're the driving force behind, because then they're developing those skills and they're taking that ownership of them. Whereas at the other end of that scale, I put in entertainment. Entertainment isn't always the right word, because it might just be that it's something that is kind of a short, sharp kind of interaction, or something that is as a remedial response that you need to get done to make sure that we are responding to what's going on in school. But it could be that we need a dose of knowledge. So when I think about these things, the things that I would describe as being skills based and longer term would be what you are doing with your teachers around developing their safeguarding work. Obviously incredibly important. Anything that is developing that long-term kind of practice of well-being skills. So I always put safeguarding as being quite skills-based. It is, yes, we do sort of a talk to start off with perhaps, but it's something that is revisited and revisited and revisited. So we are developing that kind of intrinsic skill. So we might say like safeguarding up here. And then down at the bottom end of this, in this kind of entertainment, you might think about some of the really good inset talks that you've had in your school, or you might think about some of those really inspiring speakers that you have. So I work with Camford School, and they have this lovely festival of ideas. And it's something that I'm going to go in and talk in next year. And we've been talking about it quite a lot in the past couple of weeks. But it's this opportunity for the students to get loads of ideas to come through. But that still definitely fits inside this kind of entertainment bracket. So it kind of feels in that space. Now, what I would say is that there's not sort of like, I wouldn't describe this as being sort of a negative or positive thing. What we want to try and do is create something in every box, right? We want to have something that is ticking all of these boxes. So it might be that we've got inspiring speakers that are coming in and talking about body image. So we might have speakers in here. I mean, God help you with reading my writing. If you are looking at this on YouTube, good luck. But what I'll do is I've put together kind of a one pager that you can download, and I'll make this available through the podcast notes as well. So what you've got there is you've got your skills-based stuff and you've got your entertainment. Now, what we're then going to start looking at is, well, what things are we doing that are reactive and what things are we doing that are proactive? Now, reactive is all the things that we have in place for when something goes wrong. So that, of course, is your safeguarding. That, of course, is your mental health first aid training. It's the stuff that we are doing so that we are ready to react to something bad happening. Your proactive work is the stuff that is building resilience amongst your students. It is the stuff that is creating a growth mindset for them, creating that internal locus of control. I know that I have control over my outcomes, control over myself, that I can be in charge of what's going on around me, and therefore I'm empowered. So it's those things that you're looking at doing. So what things in your strategy are really proactive? Now, what I would be saying here is things that are proactive and skills based. 100% mentoring, the work that I do, mentoring and coaching, is going to fall into this proactive, skills based area, because you are creating something that creates practice. So we're doing something week in, week out. We're doing a mentoring program. We're running that mentoring program. But we're also proactively giving them some skills that they have to then practice. So we're proactively getting out in front of the challenges that people are having. I do a lot of talking around overwhelm. Overwhelm happens, the point where people feel overwhelmed is where things get really rocky for them. But when we offer mentoring, we start to deal with small issues because we're having those conversations day in, day out. And so those little issues don't compound. They don't have this kind of snowballing effect. Mentoring is fantastic at having a proactive and skills-based approach to your well-being. You might also have things that are proactive in terms of kind of more entertainment, more short term. That Festival of Ideas that Canford run is a really proactive thing to do. They are creating great ideas about what their students can do. I'm focusing on the wellbeing bit, but it spreads across all areas in terms of careers and all kinds of stuff. Really proactive strategy there, and it's fantastic. But it might not necessarily develop the same skill. Now, what's really important to think about when you're considering how your activities map onto here is all the stuff that you might not necessarily think about immediately. I always think about what's going on in co-curricular. CCF, for me, is going to be something that's very much skills-based and pretty proactive as well. You're creating loads of resilience amongst young people going out and putting themselves through challenges. It's skills-based, it's proactive. And so you want to start to map across here. And say you're putting your crosses on and you're kind of figuring out where things are. And you suddenly realise through the process of doing this, my goodness, everything that we do sort of falls on the left-hand side, which means that everything that we focus on is around reactive work. The speakers that we get in are in response to an issue that we are having with bullying. So we're getting speakers in that are around bullying and inclusion. The activities that we are doing are all around mental health first aid. That is preparing us. It's skills based, but it's preparing us for when something's gone wrong. And actually, what we're not really thinking enough about what's going on the proactive side. Now, that's the typical thing that I see in school. I typically see that schools are fantastic at doing the reactive bit because they feel that that's the bit that you've had to do. And what we can do more and more of when we start to look at this is identify areas and times where we can create a more proactive approach to well-being. And the veil that I'd also like to apply to this, the lens I'd also like you to consider, is how can we create something that is truly empowering for the individual? Because when we create well-being, I hear the phrase a whole school approach to well-being. We want a whole school doing it. And for me, a whole school approach to well-being is not going to happen unless every individual is empowered to look after their own well-being and to support the well-being of other people around them. So that isn't going to happen unless we have something that is proactive and skills-based going on throughout your well-being strategy. And it's about connecting the idea of well-being and the awareness of what your CCF program is doing, what your adventure training program is doing. I'm going to focus on these areas that I'm a little bit more familiar with, but there, what is the debating team? What are those things doing? How could we draw well-being into that? Bring that awareness into areas of the school where we are already doing great work. You're already developing lots of skills, but could we pull some topics in to the debating team? I picked that out of mid-air, but you get my idea here. If we can start to pull together your strategy for well-being in a way that actually incorporates what's happening in your school already, and make some tweaks and bring some awareness in terms of I'm developing this skill. I can recognize that I'm developing this skill, and that this can be linked back to how I manage myself as a human being, how I manage my own well-being, and how I support other people. Then we can take full advantage of all the great stuff that's happening in school and really start to develop a skills-based approach to well-being. I hope that this is a useful tool for you. Like I said, I've created a one-pager that is free to access, and I'll just put it in the show notes of this episode, so that you can just have a little play around with this and just sit and have a moment to reflect. It's a really nice time of year to pause and reflect and think, what are we doing? What are we doing really well? What still needs work? What are the challenges that we're facing? And what are we currently offering? Because if you are noticing that you don't have students that are proactive in looking after their well-being, or they seem to be floundering because they just don't know what to do or how to think about the challenges that they're facing, then you know that you need to be more proactive and you need to be more skills-based. It's an idea to take away, to reflect on, have a go at filling out a form for yourself, and just start to plot those things on a graph. Get a visual representation of how you're approaching this in school. And I'd love to hear how you get on. So have a go at it. Let me know in the comments. Just reach out to me. I always love hearing from schools. So please let me know how this works out for you in your school. What things have I missed? What things are coming up on here that you've not necessarily thought of, that maybe I haven't thought of as well, that are all building towards having a positive impact on well-being in a way that feels really manageable and a way that focuses on empowering the individual. That's everything that we are covering off this week. I should be back into my nice weekly momentum now with my podcasts, now that we've got the event up and running and that's kind of going now. So apologies if you've missed the podcast over the past couple of weeks. We're back, we're in, let's go for it. Between now and the end of term, let's have some fun. So all the best for the rest of this week, for the rest of this half of the term as we run into summer. Take care, and goodbye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the School Mentor Podcast. We hope you're leaving today's episode feeling inspired to create a stronger, more connected school community. To access more resources, be sure to visit our website at this-is-me.uk. It would mean the world to us if you subscribed, rated and reviewed our podcast, and shared it with your fellow educators. Until next time, thank you for inspiring, mentoring, and changing the lives of the young people in your community.